Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. The podcast is designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. With me today is a podiatrist all the way from Oregon. She owns, and make sure I get this right, Central Oregon Foot and Ankle. It is Dr. Amanda Westfall, also known as, now this is very interesting, Dr. Strong Mum. Now, in Australia, we'd say mum, M-U-M, but because Amanda is from Oregon in the US, it is M-O-M, Dr. Strong Mom. So, how you doing, Amanda?
Great. Thanks for having me today.
I came across your Instagram profile. That's how I found you. And I like just scanning through things, and I'm not sure if we were already connected or I reached out to you, but I saw that you were Dr. Strong Mum, and I went, okay, what's this all about? And I went and had a look in there. And then I noticed your background, you've done exercise science before getting into podiatry, and you do a bit of weightlifting and powerlifting and rowing, and you're a bit of an athlete.
Yes. So I studied exercise science in undergrad, and I did rowing through college. And then I had a year where I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing, and I worked at a gym, and my mom had podiatry. She'd seen a podiatrist and had bunion surgery. So I went and met with her podiatrist, and I was thinking, this is a cool way to connect sports medicine and surgery and helping people. And that's how I stumbled upon podiatry. I'd never seen a podiatrist as a kid or anything like that.
So prior to doing that, prior to you seeing that podiatrist and you were doing exercise science, what was your initial intention?
My initial intention was to either go into research or go into physical therapy.
Okay.
And I was in a cycle where there weren't enough jobs for PTs getting out of school. And so I thought, okay, this isn't going to work. And I had taken enough science classes I could apply to med school, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And meeting the podiatrist was what found like that good life balance where you could have a family, enjoy your job, not be tied to a clinic or the hospital.
Okay, so in America, just to clarify, you do your undergraduate, say exercise science. If you want to be a podiatrist, you then go to medical school first.
So podiatry school is like the equivalent of medical school. So,
okay.
Yeah. So in America, you can choose, traditional medical school versus podiatry school versus dental school. So it's 4 years of podiatry school after undergrad.
Yeah, no, because I've heard people mention that they do pre-med before doing podiatry.
Yeah, so instead of pre-med, I did exercise science. So.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, that's all clear in my head now. For some reason, I thought you did exercise science. And when I said going to medical school, I thought, oh, did you then do pre-med after that before doing podiatry? No, you didn't have to.
That'd be a lot of school.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to be a physical therapist in America, they do the same thing. They could do pre-med, then physical therapy.
Undergrad and then physical therapy.
Okay. All right. It's all clear in my head now. And I hope everybody listening to this isn't shaking their head at me going, Tyson, come on, we're now all on the same page.
Every country is different for sure.
It is. It's completely different. Like, I can't speak for other countries, but in Australia, we finish high school, and then if I go, I want to be a podiatrist, I apply, I get into university as a podiatrist, and straight away, that's what I'm doing. There is no pre-med or have to do an undergraduate degree.
Yeah, so you get to work with patients way sooner.
Yeah, and we come out 22 years of age.
Yeah.
22, 23, depending on where you do it and what age you were when you started. So we seem to be a lot younger, about 4 years younger than in the US.
Yeah.
So, okay, you decided you were going to do podiatry. How did you find it once you started it?
Well, I really loved it. I liked the variety, and I liked that we were able to focus from the get-go and work on just a specific body part. Once I got into practice, I love that people feel better right away.
Yeah.
I mean, most people, you can make them feel better that day, and you can make some changes that they can see progress and they're not frustrated. And we're not giving out those sad diagnoses all the time. We don't have to tell people they have cancer, We say, okay, let's modify your walking a little bit, get you in a different shoe, try a shot, and let's keep you going. So
that is a really good point. And I have said this on many a podcast before, where I chose podiatry because no one ever died and everything could wait till tomorrow. And I had some people come and jump all over me on social media pages go, oh, that's not true. This can happen and this can happen. And I'm like, yes, that can
But it's
happen.
so rare, right?
But it's rare for that to happen. And also in the areas of podiatry where I like sports medicine, biomechanics, orthotics, the chance of that happening in the area that I was in was quite small,
Right,
minuscule.
right. Well, I'm sure there's someone that had to be told they had cancer in their foot, but very uncommon. So for the most part, patients are happy and you're keeping them active and out there. Here we have a ton of people that are hiking and running, and so I like to just keep them on the trails is what my little motto is.
Yeah, no, I will admit I have had a person where we've done the X-ray and there was a tumor in there. I've had two patients where we diagnosed a melanoma on their foot.
Yeah,
So those things do happen, which is why we need to have training in those particular areas as well. But
right,
it's
right.
not a day-to-day stress.
Yes. And I have a patient that I caught a melanoma and I just said, you need to go get this looked at like ASAP. And she had melanoma and she's doing great because it was treated early. So, that's the beauty of podiatry too, is that if we're trained to recognize that stuff, we can help people in that way.
Yeah, but in general, the best part about podiatry is someone comes in with pain, and we're one of the few health practitioners, I think, in the world that can make people feel better on one visit.
Yes. And it's amazing. And then people like that, right? And then they're happy and they send to their neighbor and their friend because they feel better. And so many medical professionals can't say that. I mean, they just give them a medication and, they can't make those changes as quickly as podiatry.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And even though it's not that we cure everything in one visit, but usually you can make a patient, there's improvement after one visit.
Or you can give them an answer. Okay. Even
Yeah,
if it's like a stress fracture, well, okay, now we know what's wrong and then we can modify it and get you back. And so they have like hope.
yeah. But that's also can be the stressful part of podiatry too sometimes, because a lot of the times by the time patients come and see us, they've been to the local general practitioner, they may have seen a physio, they've been the chiropractor, they've spoken to the butcher down the road, they've read magazines, they've gone to Dr. Google, and then someone said, you thought about seeing a podiatrist? And they come to us and they're sort of expecting an answer, which can sometimes be stressful, but other times is really cool when you nail it.
When you can give them an answer, yeah. Or at
Yeah.
least say, hey, let's do this test so that we can get you an answer. And so you're not in pain. So,
Yeah, I had one of my best friends here in Cairns had heel pain, and I remember her coming in. We checked out a few things. I said, "Look, I'm just going to tape your heel up, get you away there for a couple of days, come back in. I just want to see how this responds." I'm expecting it's going to go really well. Taped her heel up, and I knew as soon as I taped it, she was going to stand up and say, "Oh, that feels so much better." And as soon as she said that, I went, "Look, do you want to just fast forward a little bit? I'll tell you right now what we're going to end up doing." She went, "Yeah, let's just do that." So I said, "Well, I wanted to teach you how to tape your heel anyway, because I need you to do this when you're at home at different times." And we just moved straight down the path of orthotics, and that was great.
it's so rewarding when you can help people right away.
I think so. So so you got in podiatry, obviously you enjoyed it. How did you use your exercise science background in podiatry, and then how did that lead on to you becoming Dr. Strongmum on Instagram?
Well, originally I did a surgery residency. And so when I first came out and started practicing, I thought that I would be doing surgery all the time. And then I ended up being the person people would go to for a second opinion or an alternative to surgery. And I was talking more people out of surgery and saying, okay, do we need to get you into orthotics? Do we need to change your shoe? Let's change what surface you're running on. Let's change your training a little bit. And so I initially thought I would be doing more surgery than I do now, because I thought that's in the US, the training is really surgery heavy. And once I got out into practice, I realized I'm like, there's all these active people that just want to stay active. They don't care if they have a deformity or arthritis, but they just want to keep moving. So
Yeah.
I started learning way more about shoes. And early on, we would just say, go get a running shoe, right? And then now there's so much technology in shoes. And so I started learning more about that. And it's like, okay, I can actually tell what the drop of your shoe is, and I can tell which materials might work better for you. Do you need a rocker shoe? Do you need a neutral shoe? And then I would just help them with some basic changes, like you said get them into orthotics, try taping, give them an injection. And then they were back out there, and people have said, oh, I thought you would need surgery for that issue because you have a heel spurt. And it's like, no, you don't need surgery. Let's just get it functioning better.
Yeah.
And then they tell their friends, and they're in some hiking group, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. But I definitely use that exercise background more than I ever thought I would, just trying to keep people active.
Yeah, I can see the benefits, or I can see how transitioning away from surgery and more into using your sports exercise background. And there's a lot of podiatrists I've spoken to who, when they did their podiatry course, surgery was just part of it. But they said if they never had to do surgery once they graduated, they would be perfectly happy with that, because it was something they had to do, but it wasn't something they really wanted to do.
Yeah, and I still do some surgery, but not as often as I thought I would initially, you know.
So, and you did rowing at university?
Yes. So I did rowing in Oregon. We mostly practiced and raced on a river versus a lake, just because that's where my school was.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get a rowing shell a couple of years ago from a friend's dad. So I have one in my garage that I take out to the lake every once in a while, but I'm not lucky enough to live right on water to be able to go all the time.
My niece is actually, I just saw something on the internet this morning. She's at Southern Methodist University on a rowing scholarship.
Oh, cool.
So she's been there. I think this is her 5th year. She's doing her master's there in sports science and sports management.
Yeah. Does she love it?
Oh, yeah. Just absolutely loving the uni life, loving being in the States and seeing all these different areas. But she admits when she comes back to Australia, she goes, it's just so peaceful. Yes, she just misses home.
Yes. Well, the hustle culture is real in the States. I mean,
yeah.
It is. It's like everywhere. You have to like really step back and take a break to realize you don't have to live like that, you know?
Yeah, one thing I realized that we were talking before that I go to the States a fair bit. My last trip there, I must admit, was the first time I've been there in 3 years post-COVID. It was different. The country just seemed a little bit on edge. Everyone was a little bit edgy.
Yes. A lot of people are on edge. Even when they come in the clinic, they're on edge. And it's like, okay, step back. We don't have to talk about all those things that you're worried and stressed out about. Like, let's just focus on your foot.
Yeah, because I was wondering about everyone being that just, it's like everyone's just waiting for someone to, this sounds terrible, pull the trigger.
Light a match.
Yeah, light a match, yeah.
It really is. And people are just living at this like high level of stress all the time. And it's spilling over into when they come in for their appointments, or when you're trying to talk about, they get worked up, and it's like, okay, hold on. What are you trying to do? You know, like, is your goal to keep walking with your grandkids? Okay, let's worry about your shoe and all this you kind of have to like dial it back in, because they want to talk about the virus and all of the politics. And it's like, okay, we're only here to talk about your foot.
Yeah, I reckon that would be hard at times, especially in the States, because it's very, people are either one side or the other side when it comes to politics. There's not too many people that are just down the middle like, I don't care. Like Australia's very much, we don't care. Oh, yes, I know. I love it when I'm with a group of Americans, just to throw out something is going to stir them up.
It's going to fire them up. Yeah.
And it'll fire up half the room, which will then fire up the other half of the room, because then all of a sudden we've identified the other half. And it can be quite funny. But I can see how working with your patients, you've got to push all that aside and just focus on their problem.
And then redirect them to, again, focus, because, you know this when you had a clinic, is that they'll tell you their backstory of what happened 30 years ago. And it's like, okay, that's great, but what's going on now? What aggravated the problem and all that. So
yeah, I remember one of my lecturers at uni, and he always said 2 things you never talk about in a consultation room: religion and politics.
Yeah.
He said if you really want to annoy your patients, is bring up their political views, which is fine if it's exactly the same as yours, because then you can talk about it. But there's a 50% chance. Yeah, there's a 50% chance that they're not going to be. And it's the same as religion. Everyone has different views. So if you stay away from those 2 topics, talk about sport. The chance of having the same.
If they're fired up, I always ask them about how's the family. But then sometimes that gets them fired up. So then it's like, okay, what are you doing for fun?
I know I'm a Rooster supporter, that's my rugby league team. No, there's not a lot of Rooster supporters where I live. So normally if I want to stir patients up, I'll go, and the Roosters are doing well, I'll go, oh, do you watch the Roosters on the weekend? And especially they just go, oh, no, you're one of them, are you? Which is usually sports conversations are usually always funny.
Because people are polarized, but they're not going to get mad.
No.
As often. Sometimes.
They're not going to leave your clinic because you're a Rooster supporter. Then again, if you're a Bronco supporter, you might. I apologise to any Bronco supporters listening to this. Anyway, how did you come up with the Instagram thing, Dr. Strong Mum? Why did that come about?
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Well, back in 2017, I started doing powerlifting just as a form of exercise. And so I started working with a coach, and somehow it evolved so that I started doing some competitions. And then we set up our garage gym, and it just went from there. So my whole idea with Dr. Strong Mom was, foot doctor focus plus trying to be strong and live a healthy lifestyle. And then when you're a mom, it always bleeds over into everything else. So the idea was just like trying to be a good role model for people and show my patients that I'm active as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not just telling you to do this, I'm also trying to do it myself. So just like I try and wear a good shoe so that I'm not walking in high heels and then telling them to wear bulky tennis shoes. So.
Well, that's what I liked about your page. And I've said this to people so many times. If you have an Instagram page, don't make it just about podiatry. Is bring in your personality, bring in what you do outside of podiatry so people can say, oh, you're a normal human. You're a normal human. You're just like me. Even though I'm sure you could out powerlift me without any problems whatsoever, because I've watched some of your videos and you are strong. So, but I think it's great by you doing that. Your patients would look at those posts that you put there and go, oh, wow, I can't believe that my podiatrist is actually doing powerlifting.
Well, and it's cool because even if I'm not a marathon runner, I can say, okay, I understand what you're going through because I've trained for stuff and have been an athlete. And so they feel like you're empathetic instead of just someone that's sitting in a chair telling them to stop running because they have an issue. They say, okay, you've been through it. We've all had hardships and injuries and all that. So I think relating to them, even if it's not the same sport, helps them to follow their treatment plan.
And how is the powerlifting, how's it improved? You said you started in 2017.
Well,
are you getting better?
I'm trying. A couple injuries and setbacks. So I haven't competed lately, but we have a little workout group that works out every weekend together, and we always have fun and try and do some little competitions just between ourselves to keep us motivated.
Okay, because I saw a photo and there's like 4 people. There's 3 guys and you.
Yeah.
Is that the 4 group that meet under your house?
That's the main group that meets every weekend, and those are all my neighbors and my husband.
Oh, right, okay.
So, yeah, so I don't know how it all got started, but I think somebody saw us working out in the garage and stopped by and said hi, and then the other friend got invited. So sometimes we get the kids out there too.
Okay, and you did mention in a recent post that you said your powerlifting, your weight is improving, but as your weight's improving, your burpees are getting worse as you get older.
Well, I think that's just age.
Oh, I said to you off air, it's one thing my pet hate is burpees. I cannot stand them.
I just don't think they get better. I don't know.
There's just something about them. Maybe that's why we're supposed to be doing them, because they're actually difficult to do. Yeah, we hate them that much. They're difficult to do.
There's probably a reason. So
with the powerlifting, are there any things that you're particularly doing in that sort of relates back to podiatry in any way, other than just the strength and conditioning?
I think definitely the mental component is, a lot of times you want to give up when you're trying to lift something super heavy, and that applies into medicine as well. Like, people really get frustrated if they have a diagnosis that's been going on for a long time, like plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
And I just think that translates well for people that are really active, is like, okay, sometimes things are hard and you have to push through, and sometimes you have to take a break. And just showing people that, I know what they're going through is definitely translates for sure.
Okay. And one of the things, because sometimes I'll ask guests to give me a couple of talking points. One of the talking points that you mentioned was you like keeping older patients active. What is it about the older patients that you prefer?
I just think it's awesome when there's like 70-year-olds that are doing a hiking group or they just want to go to Spain and hike the El Camino Trail. Like that's their life goal. And they have a nagging foot problem that's bothering them. I just think it's great that they're active. And so I always tell them, like, we want to keep you active, whether it's like water aerobics or some big hiking trip. So let's figure out what we can do to keep you doing that goal. And I think our bodies are meant to move. Like if you sit still and never do anything, you're going to deteriorate. So I just think it's really motivating when I see these, like I said, 70-year-olds in a hiking group. I have a couple 80-year-old patients still trying to downhill ski. Keeping those guys active is just amazing. And I'm like, I want to be able to do that when I'm that age,
It would be good. Well, I only talked about that yesterday with somebody at the gym. I do Muay Thai. And one of the guys was there and he says, it gets harder the older you get, doesn't it? And I said, how old are you? And he said, 30. And
you said, just wait.
I said, I'm 57 this year. I said, if someone had told me when I was 17 that 40 years later I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the good part with even your older patients. I get inspired by older patients who are still out and about doing things and want to stay active. They're not prepared. They're not ready for the grave.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had a lady that had a bunion with a really bad hammer toe that was getting an ulcer on her toe. And she was 82, I think. And all she wanted to do was Tai Chi. And she couldn't wear her Tai Chi shoe because her toe hurt so bad. And we ended up amputating her second toe because of this chronic ulcer. She didn't care about having the bunion fixed, but she was so happy because she could get in her Tai Chi shoe and go to Tai Chi every week. That was like, she was so happy. And I was like, that's what I want to, is like keep people active and it's like working with them to figure out how to do that,
Yeah, well, asked you before if you knew Peter Wishney, and you said you've a few messages backwards and forwards. And Peter's been on the show, I think twice.
Okay.
And one of the things that he always said that really stuck in my head, and this is one of the first things he ever said to me when I met him 10 years ago. And he said, we keep, how was the way you say it? We help people live longer. Pretty much by keeping them active, we can add 5-10 years to somebody's life. And that, he said, who else can do that?
That's amazing. And it's true. I mean, we need to be able to use our feet. We use them for everything. So if they're hurting or, you're not able to walk, it's going to affect your life.
Yeah. Oh, that's what he said. We give people their life back.
That's awesome.
So Peter, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry I stuffed that up earlier, but we give people their life back. So we could add 5 or 10 years to their life, which, I think it's an amazing ability that we actually have to do. Like you said, we just keep them active.
Yeah. And they keep them, they're happier. When you're not in pain, you're happier.
Oh, tell me about it. But there used to be one of the taglines on some of our marketing was, it was Pro Arch Podiatry, keeping active feet healthy. And that was pretty much our goal, was to keep active feet as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And even though I said earlier on that I like sports and all that, I actually wasn't a fan of elite sports people. That I used to find them a little bit annoying because they were very needy.
Yeah.
Anyone that's worked with elite sports people they are needy. Whereas your weekend warriors, whether they were 20 or whether they were 60 or 70 or 8, it didn't really matter. The people that wanted to keep active were the fun ones to work with.
Well, and they're motivated to go and do the exercises and buy the shoes and go to the physical therapy. They're motivated to do that because they have a goal in mind, versus somebody, if they're a couch potato and they're in pain, they're not necessarily going to make any steps to get better if they don't have something to work for,
So how do you explain it? Because I know that a lot of students listen to this podcast, a lot of students, and which I think is great. How do you cope with when you have a patient that comes in and you'll have a particular problem and it's not responding to the typical treatment that you would do? How do you deal with that? How do you talk to the patient about it?
Well, so I think it's really interesting to kind of figure out how the person is motivated, and then kind of their learning style. So
Okay.
it's funny because I have a couple patients that are engineers and they want all the descriptions and the anatomy pictures and then why did this happen in super detailed descriptions. And so if you just say, here's a handout, stretch your foot, wear an orthotic, that's not enough information for them, right? Because they just have this really detail oriented brain versus someone that's super like an artist that's really creative. They don't want all those details of like why the anatomy of my foot caused this problem. They just want, okay, how's it going to fix it? Like, I don't care why this happened or what the structure of my foot looks like. I don't want to look at all those pictures and know those details. I just want it to be fixed. So I think knowing how they're motivated and how they learn, you can help them understand the problem better. So if somebody is like, will you put this thing in my shoe and my foot's not better? Can you just fix it? And it's like, well, what's making it worse? Well, I stand all day on concrete floors at work and my boots are 3 years old. And so why isn't this insert fixing it? Well, can we have, is there a way to modify your job? Is there a way to get a new pair of shoes? What can we do to fix it? So I think students really, like, as you're learning about all the diagnosis and how to solve the problems, I think also learning about how patients understand what you're telling them and how they learn and how they're, like, what did they take home? Like, if you tell them 20 minutes worth of why it happened in anatomy and then they didn't get anything out of that, then did you really help them, And so some patients are visual learners. Some patients have to read about it. Some patients, will do everything that you say, and some patients won't do any of it. So if someone's not getting better, I think figuring out where the disconnect is, like, did they not hear you? Did they not follow through? Do they, sometimes it's like they're going through maybe someone in their family has cancer, and so they can't do any of the things that you're telling them because there's a bigger crisis going on. And so that could be the disconnect. Okay, maybe you don't have time and energy and money to work on your foot right now because there's something worse going on in your life, And so in that case, okay, you can keep trying some of the stuff, but it's probably not going to get better until you have time to get the orthotics or whatever. So I just think if you can figure out, like, is there something else going on at home that why they can't do their treatment plan, or, if they're having financial problems, they can't afford the orthotics, okay, can you do some icing and stretching instead until you can get the orthotics and new shoes, So I think really finding out the, like, psychology of why they didn't do the exercises or treatment, or if they just didn't understand what you said because you're not speaking their language,
Yeah, no, I think that is fantastic advice. And I wish at university they did more communication courses, taught students how to communicate with people. And it's not just, oh, I'm shy, I can't talk. No, it's looking for visual cues, because sometimes you will talk to somebody and you're explaining something to them and they are like this. They're turning away from you, not even looking at you, and everyone goes, oh, they're not listening. No, it's not they're not listening. They're auditory. They're listening, but they don't need to be looking at what you're explaining. Whereas you'll get other people who you'll start drawing a diagram and they're almost sitting on your lap because they are so visual. They want to see what's happening. They want to grab the orthotic. They want to touch it and feel it, and they want to see the materials. And if you talk about a covering material, you say, here, feel this. They want to feel it. Whereas someone who's auditory, you try to hand them the orthotic and they go, oh, yeah. And you think they're not interested. So therefore, they don't want orthotics. No, they just give them the information. So I think the communication part is
huge. And it really can make or break the interaction. So if somebody is not understanding what I'm saying to them, sometimes I will send them to a really detailed physical therapist, and then they get it because they can spend more time with them. And they said, oh, once I talked to them about it, they explain it in a different way, and they felt like that was really helpful. But if you're the one that sent them there, then they also are grateful to you, even if your communication isn't maybe what helps them understand.
I can't. I think even people, not just new graduates, anybody who's listening to this is just, I think the more books you can read on communication, jump on YouTube and watch videos about communication and just understand the cues. And you can pick it up from the way people are dressed through to how they've done the hair, if they have it, There's, whether they're wearing jewelry, there's so many cues that tell you the type of person that they actually are, and a better way of, it's not always 100% accurate, but it's a fairly good indication.
But it helps. And if the patient seems frustrated, then it's usually a communication issue, right?
Yeah.
Or they're frustrated either with that it's not getting better, or that they did what you told them and it didn't help, And so then I always say, okay, let's talk about your goal. And then also, what do you think would help? Because maybe they did a bunch of research and they want to try a laser and I don't have a laser. Well, let's try it, But again, it's like whatever the person thinks that's going to be helpful to them, they need a say in their plan too,
Yeah. I remember having someone working with me, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They were seeing their last patient, and I just happened to catch a glimpse of the last patient before they went in. I quickly went in their room and I said, I know the person is an accountant. I said, this is a great example. I said, have a look at how they're dressed. It's 5 p.m. They've worked all day and it looks like they've just gotten out of bed, ironed their shirt, tucked it in perfectly, and they've only got dressed just to see you. I said, but they've worked all day. I said, they are a detailed person. Give them the details. And then it was like the next day, it was 8:30 in the morning. The person had gotten dressed. They were coming to see us before going to work. Shirts half hanging out, looked like part of it to be ironed. The hair was a bit messy. And I went, they don't really care about the details. They just give them the facts, let them touch a few things. I said, you can pick up these visual cues. And they thought it was funny. They had two extremes.
It helps though. And then they'll follow your plan better if you feel like you understand their person, like their personality and what their struggles are.
Yeah. And you can tell when you're talking to patients too, that they'll be looking at things on your desk and they'll be picking stuff up, which is the same thing as then when you're talking to them. If you put your hand on your foot while you're talking to them, you're more connected. Whereas there'll be other people, you touch them, they go, I don't want to be touched.
Yeah. They say, oh, I don't like anyone touching my feet. Then it's like, okay, we'll do the exam and then I'll stop.
Yeah. And usually they'll sit there and go, I'll just let you know, I don't like people touching my feet. So you only do the necessary touching and then you stay away from it. So It is fun. And that's, I think, is the enjoyable part about communication. It's not about you trying to manipulate anybody in any particular way. It's just, it's a fun skill to have.
And it is interesting because, like you said, if you can read some of those cues, you can also have a better conversation with somebody.
And you can have a bit of fun with it too. When you really look at every patient that comes in, you go, oh, and you try and pick what the personality's like, and then you adjust the way you deliver certain treatment to them, and then it works. You can go, wow, that was actually fun doing that. And you can try doing it the wrong way and see what happens. It's not fun. When you get that patient and you explain something to them, and you've just, oh, hang on, I've picked the wrong way to deliver this. And you can just tell by the look on their face, and you've gone, I've stuffed up here.
Well, and they're frustrated, and you're frustrated. Yeah. It's like, it's not going anywhere.
Something else I wanted to ask you about. You said you're writing a book at the moment to help people treat foot pain at home.
So my thought is especially in the United States where insurance coverage isn't great and healthcare is very expensive, is can someone buy an ebook if they have heel pain or a bunion that's hurting and just try some things at home? Because a lot of people don't know that their shoe might be contributing, that, if they're wearing high heels all the time, it can make your bunion feel worse. And so I just wanted people to do some exercises and stretching and try some things at home before they feel like they had to go see a specialist. And so I just wanted to come up with the top 5 things that we see, and give people ideas of how to work on it at home. I would say it's about 70% done. I need to get down and finish it.
Work in progress.
Yes.
Yeah, writing books are fun.
It's interesting, and I've always wanted to write a book since I was a kid, so I was like, it's time, and I need to actually finish it. So that's my goal of this year.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, well, I'm going to hold you to it. So okay. I'm going to put it in my diary that you will have your book done by the end of this year.
Okay.
And I've got another friend, I did this to a couple of years ago, and every month I just send a message, go, have you written any more? Have you written any more? And I said, you promised that you would have this done by this time. And So he did do it.
Good. Was it a good book?
Yes, it was good. It was a business related book, but it was a good book. So
Yeah.
it's I know, I think the whole just writing process is very therapeutic.
Yeah, it's so interesting and it's so different from what we do. I mean, I write these medical notes all day, but it's more fun to use your creative side and
Well, it's telling a
write something a
story
little
as well.
different. Yes, and that's the other part, is bringing in a story, so it makes it interesting to read. So it's not just a how-to book, but giving an example of a person that the reader could relate to with the same problem.
Well, when I wrote It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry, I always say the world's greatest podiatry business book, but I am biased. But when I wrote that, it was the same thing. There was all this information, but you had to put it into like a story format, because as you're telling one chapter, you're relating back to something else you may have said earlier. So it is a story you're telling. And I'm writing one at the moment as well, which which I have to finish pretty soon. And it's going to be about podiatry marketing. And it's the same thing. It tells a story as you go through. But the hardest part is trying to make it what I class as an evergreen book, so that whether you read it now or you read it in 20 years, 90% of it's still going to be applicable. It's not like what's just popular now.
Yes.
Because I did want it to be I wanted it to be a book that would sit on people's bookshelves for 10, 15 years, 20 years. They can go back, read a couple of pages, might have a chuckle at some things that are out of date, but majority of it will still be fine. And that's what your book's going to be like.
That's the hope, is this, like, you can pull it off if you have a bunion that's bugging you this year, and then in 5 years you have heel pain, and still use it and read it. So.
Yeah, and if people aren't sure when talking about what I mean about an evergreen book or an evergreen article, it's like if you write a blog article about bunions or neuromas, you're writing it in a way that whether they read it now or read it in 20 years, the basic information doesn't change.
Yeah.
How you actually treat it may not be an evergreen article. They might be slightly
That'll
different
change
article.
in 20 years, hopefully.
yeah, that'll be completely different. So, Amanda, before we wrap up, this is how I normally phrase it sometimes. You're sitting at a bus stop. Why you're at a bus stop, I have no idea. But you're sitting at a bus stop. A podiatrist sits down next to you and says, "You're Dr. Amanda Westfall. What's one tip you would give me for my career or in general as a podiatrist?"
I think the best tip is to figure out what you really enjoy doing and what makes you feel happy, and then focus your practice on that. If I didn't see active people all day, I think I would get frustrated in my job sometimes.
Yeah.
But my whole goal is to see people that want to stay active, that want help. And so that's what I put out in the world. And then that's who comes to see me, is people that feel like, oh, she understands because she got me hiking before my trip to Europe. She understands because my friend had a race and they got her through the race and then fixed her problem. So I think for students and people just starting out in the field, really kind of figure out the 3 to 4 things you really like, and then focus on learning more about that and focusing your practice on that is what will make you happy in 20 years.
That is fantastic advice. Oh, I do have another question too. Your business partner is Dr. Six.
Yes, and she does more wound care and diabetic foot care. And then she doesn't like to see the runners and the hikers, so she sends all those to me. So
that's what I was going to ask. How, you complement each other. And I was also going to comment that if she worked in Australia, Dr. Six, because in Australia we have a sport called cricket, in the UK as well. And the best thing you can do in cricket is to hit a six. So
she'd be like very popular.
To be Dr. Six is just like, that's like out of the park type surname.
Well, I'll let her know.
Yeah, it was just, I saw the name and I went, wow, that is a very, very cool surname to have. But I also wondered if you did complement each other, that you've got different, is that how you came together? Because you had different skills, or
we had
how did the partnership start?
Different skills and different backgrounds, and we were both working for different clinics, and we thought, okay, hey, we're both ready to move on. Let's see if we can do this together. So it was a good combo.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like it when you see partnerships sort of form that way, where they knew what they both liked and what they don't like, but what they prefer not to see.
Right. And then it's great. So I'll see wounds for a little while, and if they're not getting better, I send them to her because she does a great job getting them healed. And sometimes I get frustrated with wounds. So
Yeah. Yeah. So but if I was seeing you as an active patient, but then I had a wound, you would
yeah,
probably say,
then you'd go see.
go see
Yeah,
Dr.
we
Six.
would
Yeah.
work on it for a while, but if it's not getting better, I'd send it to her. So
Okay, that's great. So, Amanda, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing a bit of your story. And I want to tell people you can find Dr. Strong Mum, that's Dr. Strong, how we spell the word strong, Mum, MOM, on Instagram. Go and check out her page and click the follow because, like I said, you do a good balance between podiatry information, but also some of your powerlifting stuff, which is quite enjoyable. So, thank you for coming on the podcast.
thanks so much for the opportunity. It's been great talking to you today.
Okay, see you later.
Thank you.